Welcome back to Under Baobab Skies. Tonight, we delve into the lives of Fulani cattle wranglers across the Sahelian acacia savanna and the deep ancestral wisdom that helped them survive. The night sky stretches endlessly above, a tapestry of celestial light that most eyes will never truly behold. Here, in the heart of the Sahel, each twinkling star is more than mere adornment. It's a beacon, a guide, a silent companion to those who walk the ancient paths. As the haunting calls of night birds pierce the air and dry grass crunches beneath weary hooves, a Fulani herder moves with purpose. For out here, survival is not guaranteed. It's earned with every step. Breathe in, and you'll taste it. The air, thin and heavy with heat, carrying the mingled scents of dust, cattle, and the sharp tang of human perseverance. This is the essence of the Sahel, a land that demands respect and offers no quarter to the unprepared. It's a realm where comfort is a distant memory, where every day is a test of will and wisdom. In this unforgiving landscape, the Bororo, the wandering Fulani, have carved out a life that defies imagination. They are a people shaped by the land itself, their bodies lean and sun-darkened, their eyes sharp and ever watchful. But it's not just their physical prowess that sets them apart. No, the true strength of the Fulani lies in the knowledge they carry, a tapestry of riddles, chants, and ancient lore passed down through countless generations. Close your eyes for a moment. Let the rhythm of your breath slow to match the steady pace of a nomad's walk. Tonight's tale is one that moves with the gentle persistence of a meandering river. But make no mistake, it carries the weight of mountains. We're about to embark on a journey that intertwines danger and duty, poetry and survival, the earthly and the cosmic. As we traverse the sun-baked earth, our footsteps will fall in the cracked prints left by Fulani men and women who came before. These are the tracks of heroes and heroines whose names may never grace the pages of history books, but whose legacy is etched into the very soul of the Sahel. We'll speak their names in reverence, feeling the power of ancient poems that have been carved not just into bracelets and brows, but into the collective memory of a people. And always, always will attune our ears to the low, eternal hum of cattle in the distance. It's a sound as constant as a heartbeat, as vital as breath itself to the Fulani way of life. For in this world, the cow is more than just an animal. It's the thread that binds all things together, the living embodiment of wealth, status, and survival. As we journey deeper into the night, the stories of the Fulani will unfold like the petals of a desert flower, rare, precious, and breathtaking in their beauty. We'll learn of the intricate social codes that govern every interaction, of the complex relationship between herder and herd, of the delicate balance maintained between nomadic traditions and the ever-encroaching modern world. But be warned, this is not a tale for the faint of heart. The life of a Fulani cattle wrangler is fraught with peril at every turn. Drought and disease stalk the herds like silent predators. Bandits and rival clans pose constant threats, and the very land itself, with its scorching days and freezing nights, seems determined to test the limits of human endurance. Yet through it all, the Fulani endure. Their resilience is a testament to the power of ancestral wisdom, a living proof that knowledge, when passed down and cherished, can be the key to survival in even the harshest of environments. It's a reminder that in a world increasingly disconnected from its roots, there are still those who walk in harmony with the rhythms of the earth and sky. So settle in, dear listeners, and prepare to be transported. Let the worries of your world fade away as we step into the sandals of those who call the vast Sahel their home. Feel the weight of responsibility that comes with guarding a herd. The exhilaration of navigating by starlight, the deep connection to a land that is both nurturing mother and stern taskmaster. For the next hour, we'll walk alongside the Fulani, sharing in their triumphs and tribulations. We'll learn the secrets of reading the weather in the dance of dust devils, of finding water where none seems to exist, of healing both man and beast with plants that most would overlook as weeds. And perhaps, if we listen closely enough, we might just catch a whisper of the profound wisdom that has allowed this remarkable people to thrive in a land that forgives no mistakes. Are you ready to begin this journey? To see the world through the eyes of those who have made the harsh beauty of the Sahel their home. Then let us set forth, under the watchful gaze of countless stars, into a night filled with wonder, danger, and the timeless spirit of the Fulani cattle wranglers. Let's begin. They say the cattle choose the pace, not the sun, not the herder, not the season. When a cow grows sick, the journey stops. When the herd senses water, the march begins. And so it was for the Fulani cattle wranglers, thin as reeds, wrapped in long robes and leather amulets, walking across the belly of Africa from Nigeria to Mali, Senegal to Sudan. Some days they covered miles, other days none. Every footstep was measured in hoofbeat and heart rate. The Sahel stretched before them, a vast tapestry of gold and dust. Here, beneath an unforgiving sky, the Fulani moved like shadows across the land. Their cattle, long-horned and patient, set a rhythm as old as the earth itself. A young boy, no more than 12, walked barefoot beside the herd. His blue robe fluttered in the hot breeze, a splash of color against the parched landscape. His eyes, dark and watchful, scanned the horizon for danger and opportunity alike. Disease was not a thing you caught in cities. Out here, it sat on the tongues of cows and in the barbs of the grass. Trypanosomiasis, sleeping sickness, could eat through an entire herd in weeks. The tsetse fly, with its lazy buzz, carried death between its wings. The herder knew he could smell sickness before it spread. He could hear fever in the bellow of a calf. He'd smear ash on wounds, whisper prayers, move the cattle quickly to higher ground. His hands, calloused and gentle, spoke a language of care that transcended words. But not all dangers were silent. There were snakes. The puff adder coiled beneath scrub, its bite quick as breath. The cobra, sunning itself by rock, hood flaring like a warning. Each step could be a dance with death, each rustling branch a potential threat. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. Night falls like a velvet cloak over the Sahel. A Fulani man crouches beside a small fire, his dark skin glowing in the flickering light. His hands move with practiced ease as he tends to a cow's injured leg. The acacia trees stand sentinel in the background, their thorny branches etched against the star-studded sky. And then there were the raids. Bandits who saw herds as walking gold. Sometimes they came from rival clans. Sometimes they came with guns. The threat of violence hung in the air like the promise of rain. Always present, rarely fulfilled, the Fulani herders carried no rifles. Their protection was in speed, in strategy, and in spirits. They'd leave decoy tracks. They'd sing songs that masked warnings in metaphor. A boy might hum a tune as he passed a stranger. The bull with no horns hides behind the mountain. If you knew the code, you'd know it meant. Raiders ahead, turn east. Dawn breaks, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. A teenage boy leads the cattle along a dusty path, his voice a soft hum in the quiet morning. Beaded talismans and a leather amulet belt adorn his slim frame, protection against the seen and unseen dangers of the road. But the worst killer wasn't snake or sickness or sword. It was heat. The Sahel is not a desert. It is a grassland choked by sun. And in the height of dry season, the earth cracked wide like a broken gourd. Herders woke before the birds, walked until their feet blistered, drank from pools that even goats refused. And still, the cattle came first. Water was rationed. For every gourd of water a herder drank, the cows drank 5. The math of survival was simple and brutal. Without the herd, there was no future. Without water, there was no herd. And always, they moved. Let's pause again. Let your breath match the slow tread of a cow's hoof in sand. Dusk settles over the parched land, long shadows stretching across the cracked earth. A Fulani woman in a flowing pink robe stands like a vision of grace. She pours water from a calabash into a trough, the liquid glinting like precious gems in the fading light. The cattle gather around, their thirst a mirror of the land's desperation. There were no weekends, no off days, no fixed homes. Many Fulani lived in woven grass tents that folded like prayer mats. They built no roots into the land, because the cows decided where the family stayed. If a cow was restless, the camp moved. If a cow was expectant with calf, the world stood still. Home was not a place, but a feeling. It was the warmth of the herd at night, the familiar lowing of cattle at dawn. It was the taste of fresh milk, the smell of dung fires, the weight of tradition carried in every step. Children grew up not learning letters, but horns. They could name each animal by tone of moo. They could sense if a cow was sad, pregnant, angry, or aging. And they passed these names like heirlooms, from tongue to tongue, generation to generation. Early morning light bathes the land in a soft glow. A Fulani girl with braided hair rests beside a sleeping calf. Her patterned blue cloth is vibrant against the dusty earth. In her hand, she holds a carved wooden stick, a tool, a toy, a symbol of her heritage. This wasn't just herding, it was devotion. It was belief. It was survival wrapped in culture. To lose a cow was to lose a story. To lose a herd was to lose your future. Each animal carried within it the hopes and dreams of the Fulani people. Their milk was life. Their meat was celebration. Their very presence was a testament to resilience in a harsh and unforgiving land. And in this constant dance with dust and death, the Fulani cattle wrangler carved out meaning. In the way he tied his turban, in the songs he sang to calves at dusk, in the rhythm of his step, always listening to the land. The Sahel whispered its secrets to those who knew how to listen. The direction of the wind, the call of a distant bird, the taste of the air before a storm. All these were signs read by the Fulani with the ease of scholars poring over ancient texts. Let's pause here for a moment. The wind sighs through dry grass, and your eyelids grow heavier with each memory told. As night deepens, the stories continue. Tales of great migrations, of herds that stretched to the horizon, legends of cattle blessed by spirits, of herders who could speak to the rain. The Fulani history is written not in books, but in the collective memory of a people who have made the harsh beauty of the Sahel their home. The fire dies down to embers, casting long shadows across weathered faces. Tomorrow will bring new challenges. Another day of endless walking, of careful watching, of communion with the herd. But for now, there is rest. In the distance, a cow lows softly. The sound carries on the night air, a reminder of the constant presence that shapes Fulani life. Even in sleep, the herder's ears are attuned to the needs of their charges. As dawn approaches, the camp stirs to life. Tents are folded, calabashes filled, cattle roused from their rest. The journey continues, as it has for countless generations. They say the cattle choose the pace, not the sun, not the herder, not the season. When a cow grows sick, the journey stops. When the herd senses water, the march begins. And so the Fulani move on, their steps a rhythm as old as the land itself, guardians of a way of life that pulses with the very heartbeat of Africa. In their journey, we see reflected the eternal dance of man and nature, of tradition and survival, of a people who have made their home in the spaces between settlements. As the first rays of sun touch the horizon, painting the sky in shades of hope, the Fulani and their herds merge with the landscape. They become part of the Sahel itself, moving, breathing, enduring. Their story continues, written in hoofprints across the vast canvas of the African savanna. The Fulani do not scream when the pain comes. They absorb it in silence, in poetry, in posture, years of walking barefoot on sand that burns like coals. Years of holding ropes with fingers cracked from salt. Years of bending under sun, wind, and the will of cattle. There are no medals for this kind of pain. No songs sung for the herder whose spine curls from carrying too much. But his body remembers. Every hoofbeat, every cut, every choice to walk further than his father did. Muscles tighten in strange ways. Knees that once ran now click like bones on drumskin. The hips ache, the neck stiffens, but still he walks. The water is far. The shade is scarce. The herd needs more grass, and that grass is always just out of reach. There are herders who pass out in the fields and wake up with sand on their lips, not knowing how long they were down. There are boys who return home with blood in their noses, whispering, just the heat, even when it's more. There is no sick leave. There is only the expectation that tomorrow, yes, tomorrow, you will walk again. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. To be Fulani is to be elegant, but it is also to endure. The grace of the long stride, the quiet posture of those who do not complain. The poetry that hides pain in metaphor. A herder might say, the moon bends low tonight. It means, I feel too weak to rise. He might say, the wind carried my voice away. It means, I shouted for help, but no one came. The dryness of the air dries more than lips. It dries emotion. It dries the joy that once came with the rains. There are herders who don't speak for hours, only whistle to the cows. There are mothers who sit beside their sons and rub shea butter into their cracked ankles, humming softly, not asking questions. And yet, in all this breaking, they endure, because the herd must move. Because the old songs say, if your cow forgets the way, your shadow will no longer know you. Because there is dignity in rhythm, in doing what your grandfather did, in walking one more step, even if it hurts. Let's pause again. Feel the weight of years pressing gently on your shoulders. The Fulani do not lift weights. They carry worlds. They carry the thunder of hooves in their chests, the sting of bees and branches on their shins, the memory of songs that no longer have singers. And when they finally sit, when the herd is still and the moon is full, they do not speak of pain. They speak of cows. Because to speak of cows is to speak of life. In the Sahel, life moves at the pace of cattle. Slow, deliberate, each step a testament to survival. The Fulani herders, guardians of ancient traditions, bear witness to a landscape that both nurtures and challenges. Their bodies tell stories the tongue dare not utter. Calloused feet map journeys across scorching sands. Hands, rough as tree bark, speak of countless ropes held, countless animals guided. Eyes, squinting against the relentless sun, hold visions of green pastures always just beyond the horizon. The young learn early that pain is not an enemy, but a companion. It walks beside them, whispering lessons of endurance. A child's first blister is not cause for tears, but a mark of pride. Now you are becoming, the elders nod. Their own feet a patchwork of scars and stories. As day bleeds into night, the herders gather. Bodies aching, they sit in circles. Their silence as deep as the star-studded sky above. Words are precious here, used sparingly, like water from a dwindling well. An old man clears his throat, his voice as dry as the land around them. The acacia bends, he says, and the others nod. They understand. The tree that does not bend breaks. To survive here is to be flexible, to yield without surrendering. A young woman, her baby sleeping against her chest, speaks next. My milk flows like the seasonal rivers, she murmurs. The others listen, hearing not just of nourishment, but of cycles, of hope that returns even after the driest times. The night deepens. Someone strums a kora, its notes hanging in the air like drops of dew. Precious, fleeting, a boy begins to sing, his voice cracking with the strain of the day, but beautiful in its rawness. He sings of cattle, of rain, of love that endures even when the earth cracks beneath your feet. As the music fades, an elder speaks. His words are few, but they carry the weight of generations. We are the people of the cow, he reminds them. Our path is written in hoofprints. The others nod, feeling the truth of it in their bones. To be Fulani is to follow, to lead, to move with a rhythm as old as the land itself. Dawn breaks, painting the sky in shades of hope. Bodies stiff from sleep and toil rise, shaking off the night's chill. There is no time for lingering pain, no space for doubt. The day calls, and with it, the endless tasks of survival. A mother plats her daughter's hair, fingers moving with practiced grace. Stand tall, she whispers, weaving strength into each braid. You carry the posture of queens. Nearby, a father shows his son how to read the clouds, how to listen to the wind. The land speaks. He says, if you know how to hear it. The boy nods, soaking in knowledge that no book could contain. As the sun climbs higher, the herders move out. Their gait is steady, unhurried. They have learned that haste is the enemy of endurance. Each step is measured, each movement deliberate. The cattle low, sensing the day's journey ahead. To untrained ears, it might sound like complaint. But the Fulani know better. It is a song of movement, of purpose, of life continuing despite all odds. Hours pass, the sun beats down, merciless, sweat trickles down backs, soaking through thin fabric. Lips crack, throats parch, but still they walk. A young herder stumbles, his legs trembling with fatigue. An older man steadies him, not with hands, but with words. Remember the bull who crossed the desert, he says. His thirst became legend, but his strength became our story. The boy straightens, drawing deep from a well of resilience. He's only beginning to understand. He takes another step, and another. His pain doesn't lessen, but his resolve grows. As afternoon fades into evening, the herd finds a place to rest. The herders move among the animals, checking for signs of distress, offering comfort with gentle touches and soft words. A woman kneels beside a cow heavy with calf. She whispers prayers into its ear, her hand resting on its swollen belly. Life and death walk hand in hand here. Every birth is a victory, every loss a wound that cuts deep. Night falls again, bringing with it a brief respite from the heat. The herders gather once more, their circle a haven of shared understanding. No one speaks of the day's hardships. Instead, they trade stories of seasons past, of ancestors whose footsteps they follow. An old woman, her face a map of wrinkles, begins to hum. The tune is ancient, its origins lost to time, but its meaning is clear. A lullaby for weary souls, a balm for aching bodies. As the stars wheel overhead, the Fulani rest. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new pains to endure. But for now, in this moment of quiet companionship, they find strength. For they are the people of the cow, the children of the Sahel. Their bodies may break, but their spirit endures. In their veins flows not just blood, but the very essence of survival. And so, as the fire dies down and the night deepens, they sleep, dreaming not of easier lives, but of rain on distant hills, of fat calves and full udders, of the endless rhythm of hooves on sand. For in those dreams lies their truth, their purpose, their unwavering path forward, always forward, into the heart of the Sahel, into the very pulse of life itself. The Fulani walk alone, but they are never truly alone. Every rustle in the brush could be a predator. Every prolonged silence might harbor a warning. And the land itself, vast, arid, and resonant, listens more than it speaks. For countless generations, the Fulani have traversed the same invisible pathways, routes unmarked on any map, trails etched in memory, in the patterns left by hooves, in the alignment of celestial bodies. But these paths are more than mere geography. They are haunted. Ask an elder, and he might gesture towards a distant hill, saying softly, "That's where they took my brother." He need not elaborate. You will understand his meaning. For in the Sahel, danger seldom announces its presence. It arrives like wisps of smoke. It encroaches like grains of sand. And sometimes it wears a human visage. Cattle thieves do not engage in fair combat. They bide their time until your herd is weary, until your bones ache with fatigue, until the moon hangs high and your blade remains sheathed. And then they strike. Some are driven by greed, others by vengeance, some because ancient feuds never truly fade. Let us pause for a moment. The fire crackles gently, and we find respite beneath the star-studded sky. But not all spectres brandish weapons. Some ride upon the wind, whispers from those long-gone premonitions in slumber. A herder might jolt awake, declaring, "I saw the hornless bull with eyes of flame." We must journey south, and none dare laugh. For Fulani, belief is not mere superstition. It is survival, cloaked in allegory. Dreams hold significance. Intuition is revered. A vulture circling at an unusual hour, a thorn piercing the right heel, a shadow misaligned with its tree. These are not dismissed. They are interpreted like omens. For death lurks ever near, even when the sun blazes overhead. And yet, they return. To the same trails, the same watering holes, the same baobab trees that once sheltered a sister who never returned. The Fulani do not forsake the land. They revere it, even when it exacts a heavy toll. Each herder knows in their heart the earth remembers all. So they murmur apologies to the breeze. They leave offerings at sacred stones. They chant melodies known only to the cattle and the constellations. For in Fulani tradition, to disregard the spirits is to court misfortune. But to honor them, quietly, wordlessly, is to preserve one's existence. The flesh endures hardship. The mind remains vigilant. But the spirit, the spirit listens. And as long as they continue their nomadic ways, as long as they pay homage to the ghosts, the livestock, and the sun, they shall persevere, just as they always have. The Fulani's journey is one of constant vigilance, where every step could lead to salvation or peril. Their world is a tapestry woven from the threads of tradition, survival, and an intimate connection with the land that both nurtures and challenges them. As night falls, the savanna transforms. Shadows lengthen, stretching like dark fingers across the parched earth. The Fulani herder moves with practiced stealth, his silhouette barely discernible against the twilight sky. Above, a crescent moon hangs low, casting a faint, silvery glow over the landscape. This is the hour when the veil between worlds grows thin, when the whispers of ancestors carry on the evening breeze, and the very air seems charged with unseen presences. The herder pauses, his keen senses alert to every subtle shift in his He knows that, in this liminal space between day and night, between the physical and the spiritual, danger can take many forms. A twig snaps in the distance. The herder's hand instinctively tightens on his staff. Is it merely a nocturnal creature stirring, or something more sinister? In this land of ghosts and memories, one can never be certain. He resumes his careful progress, leading his herd towards the promise of water and grazing land. The cattle move as one, a living, breathing entity guided by centuries of instinct and the watchful eye of their guardian. As the night deepens, the herder seeks a place to make camp. He chooses his spot with care, mindful of both earthly and otherworldly concerns. A small fire is kindled, its flames casting flickering shadows that dance among the resting cattle. The herder takes his place at the edge of the circle, spear laid across his lap. His gaze sweeps the darkened horizon, ever watchful. For he knows that in the Sahel, vigilance is not just a habit, it is the thin line between life and death. Hours pass, marked only by the slow wheeling of the stars overhead. The fire burns low, reduced to glowing embers. In this quietest part of the night, when even the wind seems to hold its breath, the herder feels the weight of all those who have come before him. He thinks of the stories passed down through generations, tales of great migrations, of battles fought and won, of herds lost and found. Each narrative is a thread in the grand tapestry of Fulani history, a legacy carried in the blood and bones of every herder. As dawn approaches, painting the eastern sky with the first hints of light, the herder stirs. He has survived another night, but the journey is far from over. There are miles yet to travel, unseen challenges to face. He rises, stretching muscles stiff from the night's vigil. The cattle begin to stir, sensing the change in their guardian's energy. Soon, they will be on the move again, following ancient paths known only to the Fulani. But before they depart, the herder has one final task. He approaches an old, gnarled tree at the edge of the camp. From a small pouch, he produces a handful of millet seeds. With reverence, he scatters them at the base of the tree, a silent offering to the spirits of the land. It is a small gesture, but one laden with meaning, an acknowledgement of the delicate balance between the Fulani and the world they inhabit, a recognition that their survival depends not just on skill and strength, but on maintaining harmony with forces beyond mortal understanding. As the sun crests the horizon, bathing the savanna in golden light, the herder leads his cattle onward. They move as they have for countless generations, a living testament to the resilience and adaptability of the Fulani people. The day ahead is uncertain, filled with potential dangers and unseen obstacles. But the herder faces it with quiet determination, fortified by the wisdom of his ancestors and the unbreakable bond between his people and the land. For, in the end, this is the essence of Fulani life. To move forward, always forward, guided by tradition, intuition, and an unwavering spirit. To navigate a world where the physical and spiritual realms intertwine, where every decision can mean the difference between prosperity and ruin. And so they journey on, these nomads of the Sahel, carrying with them not just their herds and possessions, but the weight of history, the whispers of ghosts, and the enduring hope for a future as vast and boundless as the African sky. The wind whispers softly over the savanna, carrying tales of a land once ruled by kings draped in opulence, their palaces gleaming with gold and ambition. But beneath those towering spires of power, in the humble villages where life pulsed with ancient rhythms, something extraordinary was stirring. From the rich soil of silence and struggle, a voice emerged, one that would shake the very foundations of empires. His name was Usman Dan Fodio, a Fulani by birth, a scholar by calling, and a force of nature by destiny. Born in 1754 near the town of Maratha in the Hausa kingdom of Gobia, Usman's first breaths were not drawn in gilded halls, but in a modest dwelling where knowledge was the true treasure. Here, amidst walls lined with scrolls, the lilting cadence of Arabic script was more familiar than the clash of swords, and the gentle recitation of the Quran echoed louder than any royal proclamation. Picture, if you will, a young Fulani boy hunched over a flickering candle, his small hands carefully tracing the elegant curves of Arabic letters. The mud brick room around him is sparse, but filled with an air of quiet determination. Through the window, we glimpse a serene village scene, a stark contrast to the intensity of the child's focus. This was Usman, even in his earliest years, drawn not to the glitter of wealth or the allure of power, but to the pursuit of truth. As Usman grew, so too did his understanding of the world around him. His keen eyes saw beyond the surface, perceiving the rot that festered beneath the veneer of order. In the courts, corruption thrived like a poisonous vine. In the bustling markets, injustice was bartered as freely as spices. Royal decrees, supposedly instruments of governance, became tools to crush the poor and elevate the already powerful. Most troubling of all, Usman witnessed how Islam, the faith that had set his own heart ablaze with purpose, had become little more than a mask worn by the elite. It was a religion loudly proclaimed from yet rarely practiced in the shadows where true character is revealed. And so, with a fire kindling in his chest that would never be extinguished, Usman began to teach. But his classroom was not confined by four walls. Instead, he chose the shade of sprawling acacia trees, where the breeze could carry his words to all who would listen. His students were not soldiers trained in the art of war, but seekers thirsting for knowledge and justice. They came in droves, drawn by the quiet power of his words and the unwavering conviction in his eyes. Fulani herders arrived with the dust of long journeys still clinging to their feet, their weathered faces etched with lines of hardship and hope. Hausa weavers sat with hands calloused from countless hours at the loom, their fingers now eagerly grasping for the threads of wisdom Usman offered. Even nobles, their silks incongruous against the rough ground, found themselves captivated by the fire that danced behind the scholar's calm demeanor. Let us pause for a moment, dear listeners. Close your eyes and imagine the scene. A circle of eager faces illuminated by starlight, the soft crackle of a campfire providing a gentle rhythm to Usman's words. Feel the cool night air on your skin. Smell the earthy scent of the savanna. This is where revolutions are born, not in grand halls, but in quiet moments of shared understanding. As the years passed, Usman's sermons grew bolder, fueled by the injustices he witnessed and the faith that burned ever brighter within him. He spoke out against the blatant favoritism that poisoned the royal courts, his voice rising in righteous anger against the cruel practice of slave raiding that tore families apart. With words sharp as any blade, he challenged the hypocrisy of kings who claim divine right while trampling upon divine law. If you call yourself Muslim, Usman would declare, his eyes flashing with intensity, then let your actions reflect the teachings of the Prophet, peace be upon him. If you claim to uphold justice, prove it not through grand proclamations, but through acts of mercy and compassion. And you, who wear the crown, remember always the dust from which you came and to which you shall return. In the shadowy corridors of power, whispers began to circulate. Who was this Fulani upstart who dared to question the natural order of things? What right did he have to stir the hearts of the common folk, to plant seeds of discontent in minds long accustomed to submission? But Usman was no firebrand rebel, no seeker of chaos for its own sake. He was a reformer, a man who believed in the power of words to change hearts before changing laws. His weapons were not swords or spears, but carefully crafted letters and impassioned prayers. Before every act of protest, he would bow his head in supplication, seeking guidance and strength from a higher power. Yet, for all his peaceful intentions, Usman could not, would not be silenced. For he understood a fundamental truth. Injustice does not sleep, it does not take holidays or grant reprieves. And in the face of such relentless wrong, silence becomes not just cowardice, but a sin in itself. Picture now a different scene. A small room bathed in the warm glow of oil lamps. At a simple desk sits Usman, older now, lines of care etched upon his brow. But his eyes still burn with that same inner fire as his hand moves steadily across a sheet of parchment. The walls around him are adorned with the intricate beauty of Islamic calligraphy, a reminder of the faith that guides his every action. On his face we see not anger or defiance, but a quiet resolve. This is a man who knows the power of the written word to outlast empires. It was perhaps inevitable that Usman's teachings would eventually clash with the entrenched powers of Gobir. The confrontation came in the form of a decree from Yunfa, the ruler of the kingdom, and, ironically, a former student of Usman himself. Yunfa, threatened by the growing influence of the Fulani scholar, issued a ban on Usman's preaching. It was a demand for silence, an attempt to extinguish the flame that had been kindled in so many hearts. But fire, once ignited, is not so easily quenched. Instead of cowering, Usman raised his voice even higher. His words, carried on the wind and whispered in marketplaces, resonated with a people long starved for justice and true faith. And so they began to follow him. Not in a great, sudden surge, but in a slow, inexorable tide. Like water rising behind a dam, pressure building with each passing day. First came the students, young minds molded by Usman's teachings, their eyes bright with the possibility of a better world. Then the herders joined, men and women who had long known the sting of oppression and the bitter taste of inequality. Even soldiers, sworn to uphold the old order, found themselves drawn to the promise of a more just society. It was a revolution unlike any other, one born not in the clash of steel, but in the rustle of prayer mats and the quiet determination of those who hunger for righteousness. Usman dan Fodio had lit a flame, yes, but it was the people themselves who fanned it into a blaze. And that blaze, dear listeners, would soon set fire to more than just hearts and minds. It would forge a caliphate, reshape the very map of West Africa, and leave an indelible mark on history. But that is a tale for another time. For now, let us sit in the glow of this moment. Let us contemplate the power of a single voice raised against injustice. Let us remember that the mightiest rivers begin as the tiniest springs, and that the greatest changes often start with the quietest of whispers. Usman dan Fodio, scholar, teacher, reformer, a man who walked with fire in his heart, and by doing so, set the world ablaze. It began, as many great upheavals do, with a banishment. In 1804, the king of Gobert Yunfa expelled Ousmane Danfodio from his lands. But what he truly did was unleash a wave, because Ousmane did not go alone. He left with his followers, Fulani, herders, Hausa farmers, scholars, and warriors. Ordinary people who now believed they could shape the destiny of the Sahel. They called it Hijra, the migration, a sacred journey into exile, but also into freedom. The hills of Gudu became their new home, and from there a new vision emerged. A caliphate rooted in Sharia, but softened by justice. A state of faith, not just power. But to protect this dream, there had to be war. This was no rebellion for greed. It was called jihad, a struggle for righteousness. Ousmane's army didn't loot. They didn't burn mosques. They fought to purify. The first battles came quickly. Gobir tried to crush him, and failed. Other Hausa states watched, and trembled. City by city, the Sokoto movement spread, not just by sword, but by sermon. Letters were sent, emissaries dispatched. Everywhere Ousmane's words reached, the people stirred. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. Ousmane himself did not lead every battle. He was no conqueror in shining armor. He left much of the campaigning to his son, Mohammed Bello, and his brother, Abdullahi. Instead, he governed the movement with ink and prayer. He wrote dozens of texts, legal codes, letters of reconciliation, fatwas of guidance. His was a jihad of ideas as much as iron. In 1809, Sokoto was established as the capital of the new Sokoto Caliphate, a center of learning, a beacon of Islamic revivalism, a Fulani-led state where scholars were honored more than generals. But even as the movement spread across modern-day Nigeria, Niger, Cameroon, and beyond, Ousmane remained humble. He refused a royal title. He lived simply, surrounded by books and students. To him, the struggle was never about thrones. It was about truth. And when he died in 1817, the Sahel trembled again. Because a man had passed. But a caliphate remained. One built not just on cattle and trade, but on conviction. And that conviction would echo through generations. The sands of time shift, revealing the footprints of those who walked before. In the wake of Ousmane's passing, his legacy bloomed like desert flowers after rain. The Sokoto Caliphate, born of faith and forged in struggle, spread its roots deep into the Sahelian soil. It was more than a realm of borders and armies. It was an idea, a promise of renewal. In the markets of Kano, the whispers grew louder. In the courtyards of Zaria, scholars debated with newfound fervor. From the banks of the Niger to the shores of Lake Chad, a renaissance stirred, awakening minds long dormant. But let us not paint this tale with too gentle a brush. For every conversion, there was resistance. For every willing embrace of the new order, there were those who clung to the old ways, teeth bared and blades sharp. The jihad that shook the Sahel was not a gentle breeze, but a sandstorm that reshaped the landscape of power. Hausa kings toppled like ancient idols, their realms absorbed into the growing caliphate. Yet, even as cities fell and banners changed, something more profound was taking root. A new way of thinking, of governing, of believing. It spread like wildfire across the savannah. In the cool shade of mud, brick madrasas, young minds grappled with texts once forbidden. Women, long silenced, found their voices in scholarship and trade. The Fulani, once outsiders, now stood at the center of a new world. But power, even when cloaked in righteousness, is never simple. As the caliphate grew, so did its challenges. How to maintain purity of purpose in the face of worldly temptations. How to balance the sword of conquest with the pen of wisdom. Usman's successors, his son and brother, faced these questions with varying degrees of success. Some leaned towards the warrior's path, others sought to build on the foundation of knowledge. In the great mosque of Sokoto, prayers echoed 5 times a day. But between those calls to devotion, the air hummed with debates on governance, on justice, on the nature of faith itself. This was a caliphate that prized the scholar's ink as much as the soldier's steel. And what of the common people, you might ask? Those herders and farmers who first followed Usman into exile. For many, life improved. More just courts, fairer taxes, a sense of purpose beyond mere survival. But utopias exist only in dreams, and even the most noble revolutions have their shadows. Some found themselves under new masters no less demanding than the old. Others chafed at the strictures of a more rigorous faith. The human heart, after all, is a fickle thing, yet the flame that Usman lit continued to burn. It flickered in the eyes of students poring over manuscripts by candlelight. It glowed in the hearts of traders who now traversed a vast, unified market. It blazed in the sermons of preachers who saw in this new order a glimpse of divine will. As the years passed, the Sokoto Caliphate became more than just a political entity. It was a crucible of culture, a melting pot where Fulani, Hausa, and others forged a new identity, one rooted in Islam, yes, but also in the rich tapestry of West African traditions. Poetry flourished, blending Arabic meters with local rhythms. Architecture evolved, marrying the grandeur of minarets with the practicality of adobe. A new language emerged, Hausa infused with the eloquence of classical Arabic, becoming a lingua franca that bound the caliphate together. But let us not forget the world beyond the caliphate's borders. For while Sokoto grew and prospered, other powers watched with wary eyes. To the north, the fading Ottoman Empire; to the south, European colonizers, their appetites whetted by tales of African riches. The jihad that shook the Sahel had created something remarkable, a state that stood as a beacon of Islamic learning and governance. But it had also drawn the attention of forces far beyond its control. The stage was set for clashes that would shape the future of West Africa. As our tale draws to a close, let us return to Usman Dan Fodio. In death, as in life, he remained a figure of profound influence. His tomb in Sokoto became a place of pilgrimage, a reminder of the power of ideas to reshape the world. For in the end, that was Usman's true legacy, not just a caliphate of land and people, but a revolution of the mind and spirit. A call to seek knowledge, to pursue justice, to strive for a higher purpose. The Sahel would never be the same. The sands had shifted, revealing new horizons. And though empires rise and fall, the echoes of Usman's jihad would resound through the centuries. As the stars wheel overhead and our fire burns low, we are left to ponder the lessons of this tale. How faith can move mountains and unite peoples. How the pen, wielded with conviction, can be mightier than any sword. And perhaps most importantly, how the actions of a single individual, driven by a vision of a better world, can set in motion changes that ripple across continents and through time. The story of Usman Dan Fodio and the jihad that shook the Sahelis, not just a chapter in the history books. It is a living legacy, still shaping the hearts and minds of those who call this vast, harsh, beautiful land their home. As dawn breaks over the Sahel, painting the sky in hues of gold and rose, we rise, brushing the dust from our robes. The journey continues, as it always has, across these ancient lands. But we carry with us now the weight of history, the knowledge of what was, what is, and what could be. For in the story of Usman Dan Fodio and his great jihad, we see reflected our own struggles, our own hopes, our own potential for transformation. And so, dear listeners, as we part ways, remember this tale of faith, of courage, of the power of ideas. For who knows, perhaps among Yawalks, the next great reformer, the next voice of change. The Sahel awaits, vast and full of promise. What stories will you write upon its sands? When the dust of Usman Dan Fodio's passing finally settled, the Sokoto Caliphate stood, not only as a political power, but as one of the largest and most sophisticated Islamic empires in African history. Its foundations were not in stone fortresses or towering armies, but in schools, in manuscripts, in people trained from childhood to carry both the Quran and the weight of ethical leadership. Sokoto became the heart of Islamic literacy in West Africa. Every village was urged to raise its children on reading, reciting, and reasoning. Girls were taught beside boys, a rare thing for that time. Education was not a luxury of the elite, it was an expectation of the faithful. In the shade of neem trees, on straw mats spread before humble huts, young Fulani girls and boys sat side by side, wooden Quranic slates balanced on their laps. Their voices rose and fell in quiet recitation, as patient teachers guided their journey through sacred texts. This was no silent empire. It buzzed with legal debate, with recitation, with cultural crosswinds. The Fulani pastoral rhythm intertwined with urban Hausa market life, while Islamic jurisprudence shaped taxes, trade, and public conduct. It was an empire of modesty, but also immense coordination. From the cattle paths of Kachina to the trade caravans of Kano, the Sokoto Caliphate ran on schedules carved by the stars, and on law penned by candlelight. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. In the flickering light of a single candle, a Fulani scholar bends over his parchment, feather quill in hand, tracing elegant Arabic calligraphy. The clay walls of his study stand silent witness, as wisdom flows from mind to page, preserving knowledge for generations yet unborn. The night deepens, and with it our story unfolds. For the legacy of Usman Dan Fodio was not built in a day, nor did it crumble with the passing of years. It lived in the hearts and minds of those he taught, in the institutions he founded, and in the principles he instilled. The Sokoto Caliphate was more than a political entity. It was a beacon of learning in a world often shrouded in darkness. Where others saw ignorance as a tool of control, Usman Dan Fodio saw education as the path to enlightenment. In every village, in every town, the call to knowledge rang out as clear as the call to prayer. Children, once left to wander dusty streets, now gathered eagerly around learned elders, their eyes bright with curiosity, their minds hungry for understanding. And it was not just the boys who benefited from this intellectual revolution. In a bold departure from tradition, girls were welcomed into the circles of learning. Their voices joined the chorus of recitation, their insights enriching debates on law and ethics. This was a radical act in a time when many Bolivet, a woman's place, was in the home, not in the classroom. But Usman Dan Fodio understood that true progress required the full participation of all members of society. So, in the cool shade of spreading trees, or within the mud brick walls of simple schools, a generation of scholars was born, both male and female, united in their pursuit of knowledge. The impact of this educational renaissance rippled outward, touching every aspect of life within the caliphate. Literacy rates soared. not just in Arabic, but in the local languages of Hausa and Fulani. Markets hummed with the exchange of ideas as well as goods. Traders discussed philosophy alongside prices, while farmers debated agricultural techniques formed by both tradition and Islamic teachings. In the courts of law, judges weighed evidence with minds sharpened by years of rigorous study. Justice was not a matter of whim or favor, but a careful application of principles rooted in both divine revelation and human reason. And in the halls of governance, leaders emerged who understood the weight of their responsibility. They had been raised on stories of righteous caliphs, on lessons of ethical leadership and accountability before God. The Sokoto Caliphate became known not just for its military might or economic power, but for the caliber of its people, educated, principled, and deeply committed to their faith. As night gives way to the first hints of dawn, we see the legacy of Usman Dan Fodio in a new light. It was not built on conquest or coercion, but on the patient work of teachers and students, of scholars and seekers after truth. In the quiet hours before sunrise, when the world holds its breath in anticipation, we can almost hear the whisper of pen on paper, the murmur of voices reciting ancient wisdom. This was the true strength of the Sokoto Caliphate, not in armies or fortresses, but in the countless minds illuminated by knowledge, in the hearts set aflame with the love of learning. And though empires rise and fall, though borders shift and powers wane, the light of education, once kindled, is not easily extinguished. Even as the British arrived with their railroads and rifles, even as they forcibly dissolved the political caliphate in the early 1900s, the intellectual and spiritual heritage remained. For you cannot conquer a people's mind, when those minds have been trained to think, to question, to seek understanding. Today, centuries after Usman Dan Fodio's passing, his descendants still hold influence, not through thrones or titles, but through scholarship and tradition. His writings are still studied, his vision still debated, his spiritual lineage still respected by many across the Sahel and beyond. In the bustling universities of Kano and in the quiet madrasis of rural villages, the flame he lit continues to burn. Young scholars pore over ancient texts, seeking to apply timeless wisdom to modern challenges. Debates rage on issues of law and ethics, each generation finding new meaning in old words. And perhaps this is the truest sign of a lasting legacy. Not the stones of castles, but the memories in minds and manuscripts. Not domination, but discipline. Not fear, but faith. As our story draws to a close, and the first rays of sunlight paint the sky, we are reminded that the greatest empires are not those built by sword and fire, but those cultivated through patience and wisdom. The Sokoto Caliphate may no longer exist as a political entity, but its spirit lives on in every child who learns to read, in every scholar who seeks to understand, in every leader who strives to rule with justice and compassion. For in the end, it is not the dust of conquest that endures, but the ink of knowledge, the discipline of study, and the unwavering commitment to enlightenment that truly shapes the course of history. As we rise to greet the new day, let us carry with us the lessons of Usman Dan Fodio, that true power lies not in force, but in the cultivation of minds and souls. That the greatest jihad is not against external enemies, but against ignorance and injustice. And that the path to a better world is paved not with gold or glory, but with the humble tools of the scholar, ink, parchment, and an unquenchable thirst for knowledge. May we, like those who came before us, leave behind a legacy not of conquest, but of enlightenment, not of fear, but of faith, not of dust, but of the enduring power of the written word. Across the whispering grasslands of the Sahel, where the baobab trees cast long shadows over dust and dry riverbeds, there lies a hidden treasure trove, not of gold, but of bracelets, of beads, of stories whispered in rhythm, passed from elder to child. To the Fulani, culture has never needed ink. Their history is woven into braids, etched onto gourds, adorned on the wrist, and carried in the voices of storytellers and herders who remember everything, even the whispers of the wind. These are the Fulani calderas, not craters, but vessels of memory, portable archives of wisdom, symbolism, and communal identity. Each bracelet is more than an ornament. It's a fingerprint, a family tree, a silent messenger. Some bracelets speak of lineage. Others chronicle a maiden's passage through life's milestones. Still others proclaim the sacred duty of the cattle guardian within the tribe. These codes are as old as the hills, born from the belief that celestial harmony and mortal essence must intertwine. To Dan, the wrong bracelet was to perplex the spirits. To misplace one was to risk losing one's place in the grand tapestry of life. Let us pause here for a breath. The embers glow softly, and we rest beneath the vast canopy of stars. But bracelet lore is merely the beginning. For the Fulani are wordsmiths, wandering poets of the landscape. In their world, a shepherd might describe a drought, not in plain speech, but through acacia, a metaphoric verse that likens cloudless skies to the silence of lifeless herds. A declaration of affection could arrive not in written form, but as a riddle weaving tales of milk, moonbeams, and seasonal journeys. Entire genealogies are preserved through these oral chains, not in grand recitals, but in hushed tones around flickering fires. Children absorb them as naturally as others learn nursery rhymes. It is knowledge that seeps in slowly, carried with grace, reinforced by repetition during long treks across the savanna. The heavens, too, play their part. Fulani wayfinding, especially during the parched season's migrations, is guided not just by trail and terrain, but by the celestial dance above. Young herders learn to interpret the constellations as celestial maps, not through lenses, but through legends. There shines the milk star, they say. Follow its light when the earth is parched, but the udders are full. This is practical mysticism. It nourishes the herd, safeguards the spirit, and binds generations in an unbroken chain of movement and meaning. And so, long before cartographers sketched on parchment, the Fulani had already mapped the cosmos, the flesh, and the soul. Their poetry is not confined to words alone. It flows through the rhythmic swaying of cattle horns on the horizon. It echoes in the gentle clink of bracelets as women pound millet in the cool of the evening. It whispers in the rustling of grass beneath countless hooves. Each Fulani child is born into this living poem. From their first breath, they are surrounded by a world where every gesture, every adornment, every sound carries layers of meaning. The lullabies sung to soothe them to sleep are not mere melodies, but ancient wisdom set to the cadence of a mother's heartbeat. As they grow, these children learn to read the world around them with a depth that goes beyond sight. They feel the shift in the wind that heralds the coming rains. They taste the subtle changes in the milk that speak of new grazing grounds. They hear in the night sounds not just animal calls, but the voices of ancestors guiding their way. The Fulani calendar is not marked by dates, but by the blooming of certain flowers, the migration patterns of birds, the position of stars in the night sky. Time itself becomes a fluid concept, measured not in hours, but in the rhythms of nature and the needs of the herd. In this world, a simple greeting becomes a poetic exchange. "How are the cows?" one might ask. The response is never a mere fine, but a verse that speaks of the health of the herd, the condition of the grazing lands, the state of the speaker's heart. Every conversation is an opportunity for artistry, for the weaving of words into tapestries of meaning. The Fulani understand that true wealth is not measured in coins or paper, but in the richness of one's knowledge, the strength of one's relationships, the depth of one's connection to the land and its creatures. Their bracelets may be made of brass or beads, but their true value lies in the stories they tell, the bonds they represent. As the sun dips low on the horizon, painting the savanna in hues of gold and crimson, the Fulani gather their herds. The air fills with the sound of bells, the low lowing of cattle, the calls of herders guiding their charges home. This too is poetry, the poetry of movement, of the eternal dance between man and beast, between earth and sky. In the gathering dusk, fires are lit. The scent of wood smoke mingles with the rich aroma of brewing tea. Elders settle onto woven mats, their eyes gleaming with the wisdom of countless seasons. Children gather close, eager for the nightly ritual of storytelling. As the first stars begin to twinkle overhead, a hush falls over the camp. The elder clears his throat and begins to speak. His words paint pictures in the air, of great migrations long past, of battles won and lost, of love that endured across vast distances. He speaks of the land, of its moods and mysteries, of the sacred bond between the Fulani and their cattle. The children listen wide-eyed as the tale unfolds. They do not know it yet, but they are absorbing more than just a story. They are learning the history of their people, the codes of conduct that will guide them through life, the deep wisdom that has allowed the Fulani to thrive in some of the harshest landscapes on earth. As the night deepens, the storyteller's voice grows soft. He speaks now of the stars above, of how they guide the Fulani on their journeys. Each constellation has a name, a story, a purpose. The children's eyes drift upward, seeing not just points of light, but a map of their heritage written across the sky. The tale ends, but the night is far from over. Now it is time for music. A young man produces a flute carved from river reed. Its haunting melody rises into the night air, speaking of longing, of joy, of the vast open spaces that are the Fulani's true home. Others join in, with drums, with voices, with the rhythmic clapping of hands. The music swells, a living thing that pulses with the heartbeat of the earth itself. Young and old alike are drawn into the circle, bodies swaying, feet stamping out ancient rhythms on the dusty ground. This is more than mere entertainment. It is a reaffirmation of identity, a celebration of culture, a way of passing down knowledge that goes beyond words. In the dance, in the music, in the shared joy of the moment, the Fulani find unity and strength. As the night wears on, the music slowly fades. The fires burn low, casting long shadows across the sleeping forms of cattle and people alike. But even in sleep, the poetry of the Fulani lives on. In dreams of green pastures and flowing streams, in the gentle tinkling of bracelets as sleepers shift in their rest, in the soft murmur of wind through the grass. For the Fulani, every moment is a verse in the great poem of existence. Every breath, every step, every gesture is imbued with meaning and grace. They move through the world not as conquerors or outsiders, but as an integral part of the landscape itself, reading its signs, singing its songs, dancing to its rhythms. And so, as the first light of dawn breaks over the eastern horizon, the Fulani rise to greet another day. They gather their herds, pack their few possessions, and set out once more on their endless journey. But they carry with them a wealth beyond measure, the living poetry of their culture, encoded in bracelets, in songs, in stories, in the very marrow of their bones. This is the way of the Fulani, a people who have turned their entire existence into an art form, a living, breathing poem that spans generations and transcends the boundaries of time and space. In a world that often values the written word above all else, they stand as a testament to the power of oral tradition, to the enduring strength of a culture that lives not on pages, but in the hearts and minds of its people. As we leave them, moving gracefully across the savanna under the warm African sun, we are left with a profound sense of wonder. For, in the Fulani, we see not just a unique way of life, but a reminder of the poetry that exists in all of us. If only we have the wisdom to listen, to observe, and to let our lives become part of the greater rhythm of the world around us. In Fulani cosmology, the cow is not merely livestock. It is ancestor, it is inheritance, it is rhythm and relationship. To watch a Fulani herder with their cattle is to witness a quiet symphony, one of smoke signals, hums, hand gestures, and horn taps, a non-verbal language cultivated over centuries where every movement speaks. The cow, after all, is a mirror. Its health reflects your spirit. Its behavior reflects your decisions. Its fertility may even reflect your fortune. And so, cattle are spoken to not with words, but with tones. A rising hum means approach. A sharp whistle means turn. A gentle clicking of the tongue says stay near. In the soft light of dawn, a Fulani herder crouches beside his longhorned cattle. The air is still, save for the gentle notes of a carved flute pressed to his lips. Behind him, tendrils of smoke rise lazily into the air, carrying with them the promise of a new day. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. Smoke plays its role, too. Damp herbs are burned in small fires near the kraal, not just to keep flies away, but to signal states of calm or readiness to the herd. Different woods release different scents. The animals recognize them and respond. This is not magic. This is generational observation made ritual. And for those outside the tradition, it can feel almost supernatural. But for the Fulani, it's instinct made visible. A communication system rooted in coexistence. In knowing that cattle, too, have moods and memories. As the midday sun filters through dry grass, we witness a moment of profound connection. A Fulani girl presses her forehead gently to a cow's head. Their silent communion, a testament to the deep bond between human and animal. Then there is music. Fulani herders often play the hardu, a plucked lute, or a bamboo flute whose breathy notes echo across the open plains. This music is not for entertainment. It's for memory. It's how time is marked, how roots are remembered, and how fatigue is pushed away during long days on foot. There are songs for sunrise, for river crossings, for birth, for death. And each herder adds their verse to an evolving songline of movement. These melodies travel with them between seasons, across borders, into marriage, and on to the next generation. Beneath the spreading branches of an ancient tree, a Fulani elder sits, his fingers dancing across the strings of a hodu. Children gather nearby, their eyes wide with wonder, while cattle rest contentedly in the dappled shade. It is said that some herders can tell a cow is pregnant just by the way it chews grass, or can identify illness from the way a hoof presses the earth. That's not instinct, that's fluency. Fluency in a language built not of letters, but of presence. And when you ask the elder how they know all this, they smile softly and say, I watched, I listened, I walked, and I remembered. This is Fulani intelligence. Not written, but walked. Not stored, but sung. In the vast expanse of the savanna, where the horizon stretches endlessly, the Fulani and their cattle move as one. Their journey is not just a physical migration, but a spiritual pilgrimage, a dance choreographed by centuries of wisdom and necessity. The rising sun paints the sky in hues of orange and gold, casting long shadows across the land. A young herder rises, his silhouette merging with that of his cattle. He stretches, then reaches for his staff, a simple tool, yet an extension of his very being. With a series of low whistles and gentle taps, he begins to guide his herd. The cattle respond, their movements fluid and purposeful. This is not control, but conversation, a dialogue as old as time itself. As they move, the herder's eyes scan the landscape. He reads the land like a book, each blade of grass a word, each rocky outcrop a sentence. The subtle changes in vegetation tell him of rains to come, of good grazing ahead. The heat of the day builds, and with it the chorus of the herd. Soft lows and a rhythmic sound of hooves on earth create a melody unique to this moment. This place, the herder adds his own voice, a song passed down through generations. Its lyrics a map of the land and its seasons. In the distance, smoke rises from a small fire. It's not just to ward off insects, but a signal to the herd and to other herders. The type of wood, the color of the smoke hole carry meaning. It's a language written in air, read by those who know how to listen with their eyes. As the day wears on, the herder's attention never wavers. He notices a slight limp in one of the younger cows, a change in the way another holds its head. These are not just animals to him, they are family, each with its own personality, its own story. The sun begins its descent, painting the sky in deep purples and reds. The herd settles for the night, and the herder takes out his flute. The melody that emerges is both ancient and newer, song of the day's journey, of the land traversed, of the life lived. Under the vast canopy of stars, the herder rests, but does not sleep deeply. His senses remain attuned to his herd, to the night sounds of the savanna. This vigilance is not a burden, but a part of who he is, a guardian, a steward, a keeper of traditions. As dawn breaks, the cycle begins anew. But it is not repetition, it is continuation. Each day is a new verse in an epic poem. Each journey a new chapter in a story that has no end. This is the way of the Fulani, life lived in harmony with the land, the seasons, and the animals that share their journey. It is a testament to the power of observation, of patience, of deep understanding. In a world that often values speed and constant change, the Fulani remind us of the profound wisdom found in slowness, in constancy, in the quiet rhythms of the natural world. Their knowledge is not written in books, but etched in the very landscape they traverse. It is passed down not through lectures, but through lived experience, through walking, watching, listening. As we witness their way of life, we are reminded of a different kind of intelligence, one that is rooted in the earth, in the cycles of nature, in the intricate web of relationships between all living things. The Fulani and their cattle move across the land like a living, breathing organism. Their journey is a dance, a song, a prayer, a celebration of life itself. And so, as the sun sets on another day, as the fires are lit and the flutes begin to play, we are invited to pause, to listen, to remember that there are many ways of knowing, many ways of being in this world. The Fulani way is but one, yet in its simplicity, its deep connection to the rhythms of the earth, it offers a profound lesson for us all. As the stars wheel overhead and the cattle settle for the night, we are left with a sense of something timeless, something essential. We are reminded that in the end, we are all travelers on this earth, all part of a greater whole. And perhaps If we listen closely enough, we too might hear the music of the land, the song of the herd, the whispered wisdom of generations past. This is the legacy of the Fulani, a living testament to the power of presence, of patience, of profound connection to the world around us. As we leave them, moving silently across the savanna under the light of the moon, we carry with us a piece of their wisdom. A reminder to walk softly, to listen deeply, to live in harmony with the world around us. For, in the end, isn't that what it means to be truly human? Across the Sahel, where rain is rare and paths are not paved but remembered, the Fulani have always known that to move is to survive. Yet their movement is not random. It follows a logic older than any map, a calendar whispered through stars, a path carved by cattle memory, a knowledge passed not in books, but in bracelets, bones, and the breath of elders. This is the hidden geography of Fulani herders, a world where navigation depends not on signs but on sky. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly and we rest beneath the stars. The Fulani call it pulaku, a code of conduct, but also a compass. Pulaku teaches discretion, dignity, patience, and quiet strength. But it also encodes movement, where not to graze after burial. When the dry wind signals it's time to move south, and which river crossing holds an ancestral promise. In some clans, bracelets worn by women are woven with coded beads, each one representing a story, a season, or a sacred direction. And when a child asks, "What does this one mean?" the grandmother might answer, "That bead remembers when our herd escaped the flood by climbing the hill of the baobab," or that one holds the name of a cow we lost, so we never forget her steps. Then there are the calderas, not mountains, but metaphors. A Fulani caldera is a place of gathering, yes, but also of oral storage, like a mental well where stories and roots are kept and passed along through riddle, poetry, or praise song. These sites, often hidden from outsiders, are where herders recite the names of every ancestor who ever walked the grasslands before them. Even today, in parts of Niger and Mali, you might hear a young herder singing his lineage in a call and response rhythm with an elder. I am Amadou, son of Jallo, who crossed the Black River when the moon was thin. This is not performance. This is cartography, sung maps, living GPS, bloodlines as trail markers, in a world that sees movement as loss, migration as tragedy. The Fulani remind us, you can move constantly and still never be lost, because you carry your history in your voice, your directions in your bones, and your culture in the rhythm of your feet. They say, where the cattle go, we follow. But the truth is deeper. The Fulani don't follow the herd. They become the path. As the night deepens, the stars above us shift, telling stories of their own. The Fulani have learned to read these celestial narratives, each constellation a chapter in their nomadic saga. The Pleiades, known to them as Chegel, signal the start of the cold season. When Orion's belt, Engandi, aligns with a certain acacia tree, it's time to move the herd to fresher pastures. Listen closely, and you might hear the whisper of ancient wisdom carried on the desert wind. It speaks of resilience, of adaptation, of a people who have turned the harsh realities of their environment into a profound philosophy of life. The Fulani's relationship with their cattle is not merely economic. It is spiritual, emotional, a bond as deep as any family tie. Each cow has a name, a personality, a lineage as carefully remembered as that of any human clan member. The rhythm of the herd's movement becomes the heartbeat of the community, setting the pace of life itself. In the soft glow of dawn, watch as a Fulani herder rises, his silhouette merging with the landscape. He doesn't consult a map or check a compass. Instead, he listens to the land, feels the direction of the wind, observes the behavior of his animals. This is navigation at its most primal and profound. The Fulani's knowledge of the land is encyclopedic, passed down through generations in songs, stories, and proverbs. They can read the landscape like a book, knowing which plants indicate water nearby, which bird calls suggest approaching rain, which subtle changes in the air foretell sandstorms. As we journey with them, we begin to see the Sahel through their eyes. What might look like an empty expanse to an outsider is, to the Fulani, a rich tapestry of meaning. Every dune, every dried riverbed, every ancient tree is a landmark with a story, a purpose, a place in their mental map of the world. Their movements, seemingly random to the untrained eye, follow intricate patterns dictated by the seasons, the needs of their herds, and age-old agreements with other communities. These are not aimless wanderers, but skilled navigators of both space and time. The Fulani's concept of home is not tied to a fixed location, but to the journey itself. Home is where the herd is, where the family gathers, where stories are shared around the fire under the vast African sky. It's a concept of belonging that transcends borders and challenges our settled notions of place and identity. As the day progresses, we witness the intricate dance of daily life. Women milk the cows and prepare food, their movements graceful and efficient. Children play games that subtly teach them the skills they'll need as future herders. Elders sit in the shade, their weathered faces maps of a lifetime of journeys. The Fulani's adaptability is their greatest strength. In a changing world where climate shifts and political boundaries threaten their way of life, they continue to find new paths, both literal and metaphorical. They embrace solar panels to charge phones, use GPS to supplement traditional navigation, all while holding fast to the core of their identity. As the sun begins to set, casting long shadows across the savanna, we gather once more around the fire. An elder begins to speak, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. He tells of great migrations of the past, of droughts survived and new lands discovered. In his words, we hear the echoes of countless voices, a living archive of a people's journey through time. The night deepens, and the stars wheel overhead. The Fulani story is written in the heavens, in the earth beneath our feet, in the very air we breathe. It's a reminder that true navigation is not just about finding your way from point A to point B, it's about understanding your place in the world, your connection to the land and to each other. As we prepare to part ways with our Fulani hosts, we carry with us a new understanding. In a world increasingly defined by borders and barriers, the Fulani offer a different vision, one of movement as freedom, of adaptation as strength, of identity rooted not in place, but in journey. Their legacy is not written in stone or on paper, but in the wind-swept dunes, in the paths worn by countless hooves, in the stories passed from generation to generation. It's a legacy of resilience, of harmony with nature, of finding one's way no matter how challenging the terrain. As we leave, the words of a Fulani proverb linger in our minds. The world is a book, and those who do not travel read only one page. The Fulani, in their ceaseless movement, have read volumes. Their wisdom, earned through centuries of nomadic life, offers profound lessons for us all. In the end, the Fulani teach us that to be truly at home in the world is not to stay in one place, but to carry your home within you. To navigate not just by maps and compasses, but by stars and stories, by the whispers of ancestors and the promises of the land. They remind us that in life's great journey, it's not the destination that matters, but the path we choose and the wisdom we gather along the way. For in the Fulani's world, every step is a homecoming, every horizon a new beginning. And so, as the first light of dawn breaks over the Sahel, the Fulani prepare to move once more. Their journey continues, as it has for countless generations. They move forward, always forward, guided by the invisible maps written in their hearts and souls. In their footsteps, we find a profound truth, that to be human is to move, to adapt, to seek. And in that seeking, to find not just survival, but the very essence of life itself. In every Fulani settlement, whether scattered across the open Sahel or nestled near riverbanks, there was always one name that moved like wind through the mouths of the people: the elder, the leader, the keeper of cattle, customs, and command. But to understand the Ardoan, the elite among Fulani, is to know that wealth was never just about how many cows grazed your fields. It was how many negotiations you could balance, how many families you could feed, how many stories you could protect without raising your voice. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. The Ardo was not merely a chief. He was a walking institution. His power sat at the crossroads of economy, politics, and spirituality. His morning began before the sun did, meeting with cattle scouts, herbalists, and negotiators. A single decision, whether to move the herd or rest them, could affect dozens of families. And in times of drought or disease, it was the Ardo who sat with advisors to interpret signs. Tracks in the sand, shifts in the wind, ... Silence among the birds. His compound was often the largest in the settlement, built from hardened mud, shaped like the crescent moon. Not for show, but to host debates, rituals, and resolution courts. The Ardo's wives and daughters weren't just ornaments of the home. They were cultural archivists, skilled in dyeing indigo cloth, weaving talismans, and preserving oral memory. Their jewelry, made of silver and cowrie, spoke of trade routes that spanned kingdoms. Ardo and his sons. Some were trained as warriors, others as diplomats, learning how to speak to Hausa traders, Tuareg nomads, or Sokoto clerics. But the true test of an Ardo was not wealth or size. It was his ability to negotiate peace, to solve a land dispute with one proverb, to calm a frightened herd with a hymn, to bring together warring clans without spilling blood. In the later centuries, especially during the rise of the Sokoto Caliphate, Ardoan played another critical role. As intermediaries between the nomads and the empire, they attended caliphal meetings. They negotiated tax terms. They secured grazing rights across borders drawn in ink and fire. To outsiders, they were rural chiefs. To their people, they were the past, present, and future braided into one. Even today, among pastoralist Fulani communities in Nigeria, Mali, and Cameroon, the descendants of Ardoan still hold sway, not always with formal power, but with deep respect, because in a world that changes fast, the Ardo remains slow, deliberate, grounded, and always listening. The sun rises over the Sahel, painting the sky in hues of amber and gold. The Ardo emerges from his compound, his white robes billowing gently in the morning breeze. His eyes, weathered by years of watching over his people, scan the horizon. In one hand, he holds a staff, not just a symbol of authority, but a tool to guide, to point, to lean on, when the weight of responsibility grows heavy. With each step, the amulets around his neck whisper secrets of generations past. He pauses, breathing in the scent of earth and cattle. This land, vast and unforgiving, has been both friend and foe to the Fulani. But the Ardo knows its moods, its rhythms, its hidden bounty. A young herder approaches, head bowed in respect. "Ardo," he says, "the wells to the north are running dry." The elder nods, his mind already weighing options, calculating risks. This is the dance of survival that the Ardo has perfected. A delicate balance between tradition and necessity, between the needs of the herd and the needs of the people. He calls for a council meeting, and soon the elders gather under the acacia tree. Their voices rise and fall like the wind through grass, each word carefully chosen, each argument weighed against centuries of wisdom. The Ardo listens more than he speaks, for he knows that true power lies not in commands, but in the ability to hear the unspoken, to see the unseen. As the sun climbs higher, a decision is reached. They will move the herds to new pastures, following ancient routes known only to the Arduin. But this journey will require diplomacy, for they must cross lands held by other tribes. The Ardo returns to his compound, where his wives are already preparing. They pack essentials with practiced efficiency: dried meat, milk, gourds, medicinal herbs. Their hands move swiftly, but their eyes are watchful, reading the Ardo's face for signs of concern. His eldest daughter approaches, carrying a newly woven talisman. "For protection on the journey," she says, her voice soft but sure. The Ardo smiles, touched by the blend of old magic and new love in her gesture. As dusk falls, the Ardo stands at the edge of the settlement. The first stars appear, celestial guides that have led his people for countless generations. He begins to hum, a low melodic sound that carries on the evening air. One by one, voices join his. Men, women, children. The song swells, a tapestry of hope and determination. It is a reminder of who they are, where they come from, and where they are going. In this moment, the Ardo is more than a man. He is the embodiment of his people's resilience, a living bridge between earth and sky, past and future. The night deepens, and the Ardo retreats to his sleeping mat. But his mind remains active, planning, strategizing, for tomorrow brings new challenges, new negotiations, new decisions to be made. In the quiet hours before dawn, he rises again. He steps outside, feeling the cool sand beneath his feet. The cattle stir, sensing the coming day. The Ardo closes his eyes, listening to the whispers of his ancestors, to the heartbeat of the land, to the silent prayers of his people. And in that moment of stillness, he finds strength. For he knows that as long as there are Arduin, the Fulani will endure, adapt, and thrive. The first light of day breaks over the horizon. The Ardo opens his eyes, ready to lead his people into another tomorrow. For this is his calling, his duty, his honor, to be the keeper of cattle, customs, and command. To be the one who balances negotiations, feeds families, and protects stories. To be Ardo, a name that moves like wind through the mouths of the people. And so, as the sun rises fully, casting long shadows across the Sahel, the Ardo begins another day. Another chapter in the endless story of his people. Another moment in the timeless dance of survival and prosperity. For, in every Fulani settlement, whether scattered across the open Sahel or nestled near riverbanks, there will always be one name that carries the weight of history and the promise of the future. Ardo, the elder, the leader, the keeper of a legacy that stretches back to the very dawn of time. Not all Fulani elite lived beneath tents or moved with the rhythm of the herd. Some, especially during the height of the Sokoto Caliphate, lived in permanent homes, brick-built compounds shaped like thought itself. In cities like Sokoto, Gwandu, and Katsina, Fulani leaders known as Arduan and religious scholars known as Malams built lives that blended earth and intellect, cattle wealth and Islamic governance. Their palaces were not gold-plated, they were not decorated with imported marble or foreign flair. They were made of mud, carved by memory and maintained by ritual. Yet within them you would find treasures the world has long ignored. Manuscripts in Arabic, passed from hand to hand, courtyards filled with lemon trees and prayer chants, rooms designed to catch the breeze during the Sahel's cruelest afternoons. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. In one such palace, a visitor might encounter a quiet room with nothing but a woven mat and a single lantern. This, they would be told, is the library, the heart of the household, where Islamic texts mixed with Fulani proverbs, where boys learned to write not just the Quran, but local history. Leadership was taught here, not with fists, but with fables, not with punishment, but with patience. The walls whispered stories of ancestors who tamed wild bulls and negotiated peace between warring clans. They spoke of women who could read the sky and predict rain months before the first cloud appeared. In these rooms, young minds were shaped like clay, molded by the gentle hands of elders who understood that true power comes not from force, but from wisdom. In another corner of the compound, a large granary stood, not just a food store, but a symbol of abundance. It was said, a leader who has no grain cannot offer wisdom, because hungry people do not hear sermons. They hear only the rumble of their bellies. The granary was more than wood and thatch. It was a testament to foresight, to the delicate balance between present needs and future uncertainties. Its very presence spoke of a leader's duty to provide, to nurture, to sustain. Within its cool shadows, millet and sorghum rested in clay pots, each grain a promise of survival through the lean months, a promise of celebration when the rains returned, a promise that the cycle of life would continue unbroken. The women of the house, they ran entire economies from behind the walls. Milk was traded, dyed cloths sold at market, and stories preserved. They were not voiceless. They were the voice that taught children to name the stars, to track the cattle by scent, and to negotiate with a merchant twice your age. Their hands were never idle. In the cool of the morning, they churned butter with rhythmic precision. As the sun climbed higher, they wove tales and textiles with equal skill. And when evening fell, they prepared meals that nourished both body and soul. These women were the keepers of secrets. They knew which plants could heal a fever, and which words could mend a broken heart. Their laughter echoed through the compound, a reminder that joy is as essential to survival as bread and water. Evenings in these palaces were quiet, not empty, but reflective. The smell of incense drifted through the walls, while herders returned from the fields, singing slow songs to the cows. As darkness fell, the compound came alive with a different kind of energy. Children gathered around elders, hungry for stories of brave warriors and clever tricksters. The air hummed with the soft recitation of Quranic verses, a gentle reminder of the divine amidst the earthly. In the courtyard, men gathered to discuss the day's events. Their voices were low, measured, each word carefully chosen, for they knew that in this world of dust and dignity, words had power. The power to build alliances or spark conflicts, the power to preserve tradition or usher in change. And through it all, the Ardo listened to his people, to the Quran, to the sky. For in this life, under threat from drought, empire, or illness, dignity was not about display. It was about stillness. The Ardo's ears were attuned to the subtlest shifts in tone, the unspoken concerns that lay beneath casual conversation. His eyes, sharp despite the years, noticed the slight droop of a shoulder that spoke of a burden too heavy to bear alone. He listened to the wind that carried news from distant lands, to the restless shuffling of cattle that hinted at coming rains, to the silence between heartbeats that held the wisdom of generations. In his stillness, he became a living bridge between earth and sky, between past and future, between the world of men and the realm of the divine, the kind that allows a man to rule without shouting, to govern without spectacle, to lead while sitting cross-legged in silence. For true leadership, the Ardo knew, was not about being seen. It was about seeing. Seeing the potential in a child's stumbling first steps. Seeing the strength in a widow's quiet resilience. Seeing the hope that bloomed like desert flowers after the faintest rain. In this palace of dust and dignity, power flowed not from the barrel of a gun or the glitter of gold. It emanated from the steady gaze of a leader who had learned to listen. From hands calloused by labor yet gentle in their touch. From a heart that beat in time with the pulse of his people. As night deepened, the compound settled into a peaceful hush. The Ardo sat in his private chamber, a single candle casting long shadows on the wall. Before him lay a weathered manuscript, its pages yellow with age, but alive with the wisdom of centuries. His fingers, once strong enough to break a wild horse, now traced the delicate Arabic script with reverence. Each word a testament to the enduring power of knowledge. Each line a thread connecting him to scholars and saints who had walked this earth long before. Outside, the desert wind whispered secrets to the stars. The cattle lowed softly in their pens, their breath mingling with the scent of night-blooming jasmine. And somewhere in the distance, a lone flute played a melody as old as the hills themselves. In this moment, suspended between earth and sky, the Ardo felt the weight of his responsibility. Not as a burden, but as a sacred trust. For he was more than just a leader of men. He was a guardian of traditions, a keeper of stories, a shepherd of souls. As he closed the manuscript and extinguished the candle, the Ardo offered a silent prayer, not for power or glory, but for the strength to serve, for the wisdom to guide, for the compassion to heal. And as sleep finally claimed him, he dreamed not of conquest or riches. He dreamed of green pastures stretching to the horizon, of children laughing as they learned to milk their first cow, of elders passing down ancient knowledge beneath the shade of an acacia tree. For in this palace of dust and dignity, dreams were not mere fancies. They were blueprints for a future yet to be built, a future where the old ways and the new could dance together in harmony, where the wealth of the land and the wealth of the mind flowed freely, nourishing all who thirsted for knowledge and justice. And so, as the first light of dawn painted the sky with promise, the palace stirred to life once more, ready to face whatever challenges the new day might bring, secure in the knowledge that true strength lies not in walls of stone, but in hearts of courage and minds of wisdom. For this was the legacy of the Fulani, not just herders of cattle, but shepherds of dreams. Not just dwellers in tents, but builders of civilizations. Not just wanderers in the wilderness, but wayfarers on the path of enlightenment. And as the sun rose higher, casting long shadows across the courtyard, the palace stood as a testament to this enduring truth, that in a world of dust and dignity, it is not the grandeur of our dwellings that defines us, but the nobility of our spirits. The Fulani elite were not simply cattle-rich herders or scholarly ascetics. They were also negotiators, bridge, builders, diplomats, moving between the hooves of empire and the prayers of their people. When Usman Dan Fodio's jihad succeeded, and the Sokoto Caliphate rose from the Sahel dust, it did not erase diversity, it had to govern it. Hausa city-states, Tuareg raiders, Nupe traders, and even remnants of Borno rulers all had their own ambitions. To rule meant to balance, and the Fulani Ardawan were central to that balance. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. Imagine, if you will, a 19th century Fulani diplomat in flowing white robes, seated under a cloth pavilion. Around him, Hausa scribes scribble furiously, their fingers stained with ink. Tuareg emissaries stand tall, their indigo veils catching the desert wind. Quranic students huddle nearby, their eyes bright with curiosity and ambition. This is the court of the Ardo, where the fate of empires hangs in the balance. At one end of the court, a caravan leader complains of unfair taxes. His voice is rough with the dust of 1,000 miles, his eyes narrowed with suspicion. At the other, a Quranic scholar demands stricter moral enforcement. His words are sharp, edged with the certainty of divine law. Between them sits the Ardo, silent at first, sipping fermented milk from a gourd. The tension in the air is thick enough to cut with a knife, but the Ardo seems untroubled. He savors the tangy taste of the milk, letting the moment stretch like taffy in the sun. When he finally speaks, he doesn't choose sides. He speaks in proverbs, in parables, in calm, deliberate speech that reminds each man of his role in the greater rhythm of the empire. The camel that carries the heaviest load, he begins, his voice soft but carrying, also drinks the deepest at the oasis. He pauses, letting the words sink in. And the scholar who demands the strictest adherence must also show the greatest mercy. To rule, he knows, is to preserve the illusion of harmony, even when the cattle are restless, even when the empire cracks beneath its own weight. This isn't cowardice. It's the Fulani art of not collapsing under pressure. Because collapse could come from anywhere. A drought could empty granaries, leaving once prosperous cities to wither in the unforgiving sun. A rival emir could whisper betrayal, planting seeds of discord that could bloom into bloody conflict. Even a single stampede could ruin a season's wealth, trampling carefully tended fields and scattering precious herds to the four winds. The Ardawan understood this precarious balance all too well. They walked a tightrope between tradition and change, between the old ways and the new pressures that pushed at the borders of their world. Now, let us shift our gaze. Picture a Fulani ruler walking slowly past his cattle. His steps are measured, deliberate. He pauses at a saddle adorned with intricate silver patterns, running his fingers over the cool metal. In the background, his guards stand at attention, their spears glinting in the harsh sunlight. Deep blue turbans frame their weathered faces. Speaking of long days spent under the merciless Sahel sky, this ruler, like the diplomat we saw earlier, is a master of negotiation. But his skills are not limited to internal disputes. The Ardawan understood how to deal with colonial explorers, too. They hosted British officers under acacia trees, offering hospitality without trust. The tea was always hot, the conversation always polite, but beneath the surface, a careful dance of power and information played out. They allowed maps to be drawn, but not always accurately. A strategically misplaced oasis here, a conveniently forgotten trade route there. The land revealed itself slowly, grudgingly, to foreign eyes. They permitted treaties, but never without silence. Because in Fulani diplomacy, what is not said often weighs more than what is spoken. A well-placed pause could defuse conflict, leaving room for interpretation and face-saving compromise. A single quote from the Quran could end a rebellion, reminding would-be usurpers of their duty to Allah and the community. A raised eyebrow could signal an entire change in strategy. understood instantly by those fluent in the subtle language of court politics. This subtlety, this cultural fluency in both Islamic law and ancestral rhythm, made the Fulani elite difficult to conquer and even harder to predict. They were not warriors in the traditional sense, but their weapons were no less potent for being invisible. They wielded words like swords, proverbs like shields. They could turn a phrase in such a way that it cut deeper than any blade, or offer a compliment so artfully constructed that it bound the recipient in chains of obligation. Their negotiations were not just about trade agreements or border disputes. They were about preserving a way of life, a delicate ecosystem of belief and practice that had sustained their people for generations. They weren't perfect, of course. There were failures, moments when greed or short-sightedness got the better of even the most skilled diplomat. Internal conflicts sometimes tore at the fabric of Fulani society, leaving scars that would take generations to heal. But the art of survival, the art of protecting cattle, people, scripture, and story, that was the legacy of their negotiation. It was a legacy written not in stone or on paper, but in the very rhythms of Fulani life, in the way a herder could read the sky and know when to move his cattle, in the cadence of a scholar's recitation, preserving ancient wisdom in the face of change, in the subtle gestures and unspoken understandings that governed relationships between families, clans, and kingdoms. This was the true power of the Fulani elite. Not the power to conquer or dominate, but the power to adapt, to bend without breaking, to find harmony in the midst of chaos. As our fire grows faint and the coals shimmer with sleep, let us drift into our final reflection. The legacy of the Fulani negotiators is not just a historical curiosity. It speaks to something deeper, something universal about the human experience. In a world that often seems to value brute force over subtlety, aggression over diplomacy, their story reminds us of the power of patience, of the strength that can be found in flexibility, of the wisdom that comes from truly listening, not just to words, but to the silences between them. The Ardawan knew that true power lay not in imposing one's will, but in finding the delicate balance that allowed all to thrive. They understood that the greatest victories are often won not on battlefields, but in quiet conversations under starlit skies. As we close our eyes and let the gentle rhythms of the night wash over us, let us carry with us this lesson from the Fulani elite. Let us remember that in our own lives, in our own negotiations, be they with family, friends, or the wider world, there is strength in subtlety. There is power in patience, and there is wisdom in the art of bending without breaking. For, in the end, it is not the rigid tree that survives the storm, but the flexible reed that bows to the wind and rises again. And so, as the last embers of our fire fade and the first light of dawn begins to paint the eastern sky, we bid farewell to the Fulani negotiators of empire. Their legacy lives on, not just in the pages of history books, but in the very fabric of the societies they helped to shape. May we carry their wisdom with us as we face our own challenges, our own negotiations, in the complex world we inhabit. And may we always remember the power of a well-placed silence, a carefully chosen word, and the art of finding harmony in the midst of discord. Somewhere out on the open Sahel tonight, beneath the whispering acacia trees and the call of night birds, a single cowbell chimes. Not loud, not rushed, just a soft, rhythmic echo of motion, of life continuing, as it always has. And that is where we leave this story. Not in a palace, not in a battlefield, but in motion. Because to be Fulani was to move, to follow rain before it falls, to read the mood of the herd and the heart of the sky, to carry memory in your feet and maps in your bones. We spoke tonight of hardship, of blistering sun and stampeding chaos, of poisoned wells and watchful predators, of a life that would break most before the second dawn. We met warriors and scholars, mothers who sang to cows instead of cradles, children who learned constellations before they learned to count. We stepped into the quiet corridors of Fulani elite, not to chase opulence, but to understand legacy. A legacy of endurance, of negotiation, of guiding a people between empires and deserts, between scripture and sky, and beneath it all, the cattle. Not just livestock, but lineage. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. There is an old Fulani saying, "The cow does not speak, but it tells you everything." Perhaps the same could be said of history and of us. In the vast expanse of the Sahel, where the earth meets the heavens in a dance of dust and starlight, we find ourselves at the end of our journey. But endings, like the horizon, are merely illusions. For the story of the Fulani, like the endless cycle of seasons, continues its eternal march across time and space. Tonight, as we bid farewell to this tale, let us not think of it as a conclusion, but as a pause in the grand symphony of life. A moment to reflect, to breathe, to feel the pulse of a narrative that has spanned centuries. We began our tale not in the grandeur of royal courts, nor in the chaos of historic battlefields, but in the quiet, steady rhythm of hooves upon earth. For it is in this constant motion, this ceaseless journey, that the true essence of the Fulani spirit resides. To be Fulani is to embrace the nomad's heart, to feel the pull of distant grasslands, to hear the whisper of coming rains long before the first drop falls. It is to read the language of the wind, to understand the subtle shifts in the herd's mood, and to navigate by stars that have guided generations before. We have walked together through tales of unimaginable hardship, days scorched by an unforgiving sun, nights haunted by the howls of unseen predators. We felt the ache of thirst at poisoned wells, the heart-stopping terror of stampedes in the dark. These are the trials that would break lesser spirits, yet the Fulani endure, their resilience as vast as the African sky. In our journey, we've encountered figures of legend and lore, warriors whose names echo through time, scholars whose wisdom illuminated the darkest corners of ignorance. We've listened to the lullabies of mothers, their songs not for infants in cradles, but for calves in the herd, a testament to the deep bond between the Fulani and their beloved cattle. We've marveled at children, their eyes reflecting the light of 1,000,000 stars. Learning the patterns of the cosmos before they could count the cattle in their care. These are the seeds of future generations, carrying ancient knowledge in young hearts. Our path has led us through the corridors of power, where Fulani leaders have shaped the destiny of nations. Yet, even here, amidst the trappings of authority, we found not a pursuit of wealth or dominion, but a commitment to preserving a way of life, a dedication to guiding their people through the ever-shifting sands of time, negotiating the delicate balance between tradition and progress, between the call of the ancestors and the demands of the modern world. And always, always, there were the cattle. More than mere animals, they are the lifeblood of the Fulani. Each cow, each bull, each calf, a living link to the past, a promise for the future, a measure of wealth beyond gold or silver. In their gentle eyes and steady gait, we see the reflection of countless generations, the embodiment of a culture that has weathered empires and outlasted kingdoms. As we sit here now, the fire casting dancing shadows, the stars wheeling overhead in their ageless patterns, let us take a moment to truly listen. Listen to the soft breathing of the herd, the whisper of wind through grass, the distant call of a night bird. In this symphony of the Sahel, we hear the heartbeat of a story that refuses to end. There is wisdom in the old Fulani proverb. The cow does not speak, but it tells you everything. In its silent presence, we find a mirror to our own existence. For are we not, each of us, a living story? A tale told not in words, but in actions, in the paths we choose, in the lives we touch. History, like the cattle, speaks to those who know how to listen. It whispers of triumphs and tragedies, of love and loss, of the eternal dance between man and nature. And we, in our brief moment upon this earth, are both the listeners and the storytellers, carrying forward the legacy of those who came before, shaping the narratives that will guide those who follow. So tonight, as we bring this chapter to a close, may your rest be deep and your dreams be vast. May your breath find the rhythm of a calm herd, steady and sure in the face of whatever tomorrow may bring. May your spirit soar across endless grasslands, where ancient wisdom walks barefoot upon the earth. And the stars above are not just points of light, but beacons guiding you home. You have been listening to Under Baobab Skies, a journey through the heart of the Fulani world. As you drift into slumber, know that this is not an end, but a beginning. For as surely as the sun will rise, as certainly as the seasons will turn, we will meet again beneath these stars. And when we do, another story will unfold, another chapter in the grand epic of human experience. Until then, may the spirits of the Sahel watch over you. May the wisdom of the ancestors guide your steps. And may you always find your way back to the open sky, where stories are born and legends never die. Sleep well, dear listeners. The night is long, but dawn always comes. And with it, the promise of new adventures, new understanding, and the eternal rhythm of life that beats in the heart of every Fulani, in the pulse of every herd, and in the soul of the great African continent itself. Until we meet again, under the Baobab skies,